The man nobody recognized at it was late evening when Keanu Reeves pulled into the parking lot of the small roadside inn. It wasn't the kind of place where people expected movie stars to show up. The neon sign above the office flickered in the darkness, casting a tired glow on the cracked pavement. Keanu sat in his old truck for a moment, staring at the raindrops collecting on the windshield. He was tired, bone-deep tired, not from work, but from the weight he carried inside him, years of fame, of crowds, of people wanting pieces of him but never really seeing him. He had come here for a reason. For once, he wanted to be invisible, to rest without bodyguards, cameras, or fake smiles. He had checked in under an alias, Johnny Silver. It was a name that meant nothing here, but to him, it was a reminder of how easily a name could hide the truth. All he needed was one night to breathe like an ordinary man. He grabbed his small duffel bag from the passenger seat. No designer luggage, no entourage, no fancy suit. Just an old sweater, a pair of jeans, and a book he'd been reading on and off for years. As he stepped into the lobby, the door chimed, startling the young woman at the front desk. Her name, tag read Melissa. She couldn't have been older than 23. Her hair pulled back into a neat bun, her eyes glued to the glowing screen of her phone. Keanu cleared his throat. "Excuse me." She looked up, her eyes landing on him with a polite but distant smile. "Hi, can I help you?" He shifted his bag on his shoulder. "I have a reservation. Name's Johnny Silver." Melissa typed something on her computer, her fingers clicking rapidly. She frowned at the screen. One moment. Keanu stood there, feeling the quiet hum of the lobby sink into his bones. There was a dusty ficus in the corner, a vending machine buzzing louder than it should, and an old couch that looked like it hadn't been sat on in years. It was perfect, imperfect enough to feel real. But when Melissa looked back at him, her smile was gone. In its place was suspicion. "Sir, there's something wrong with your reservation. It says the card you used doesn't match the ID on file." Keanu's brow furrowed. "I can show you my ID. The card is under my company. It's a business card." She crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. "Sir, this is a small place. We've had problems with fake bookings before. I'm sorry, but I'm going to need to see more proof." Keanu reached into his pocket, pulling out his driver's license. He hesitated for just a second because on that card was the name everyone in the world knew, the name he had wanted to hide for just one night. He handed it over. Melissa squinted at the name, then at his face. Her eyes widened, then narrowed again. "This says you're Keanu Reeves." Keanu nodded, a small, tired smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, that's me." She laughed, but it wasn't the kind of laugh that warmed the room. It was sharp, slicing through the quiet. "Right, Keanu Reeves. What are you doing here, huh? You think I'm stupid?" Keanu felt something twist inside him. He didn't blame her. He knew how ridiculous it sounded. He looked like an ordinary man, no entourage, no fancy car, no mask of celebrity. Just a man who wanted a room. "Look," he said softly, "I know it sounds strange. I just need a place to sleep tonight. I won't cause any trouble. I'll pay cash if it's easier." But Melissa was already picking up the phone. Her voice turned cold, rehearsed. "Security? Can you come to the front desk? We have someone here trying to use a fake ID." Keanu sighed, running a hand through his hair. The door chimed again as two security guards walked in. They were young, eager to prove themselves. Their eyes bounced between Melissa and Keanu like they were looking for a fight. "Sir," one of them said, his hand hovering near the radio on his belt, "we're going to have to ask you to leave." Keanu wanted to laugh. He wanted to explain. But instead, he just looked at Melissa, who was glaring at him like he was a liar, a fraud, a nobody. "You really think a movie star would stay here?" she asked, her voice dripping with disbelief. Keanu opened his mouth but closed it again. He knew it wouldn't matter what he said. People saw what they wanted to see, and sometimes it was easier to be a ghost. He lifted his bag onto his shoulder again, his eyes soft but tired. "I'm sorry for the trouble." As he turned to leave, he heard Melissa mutter under her breath, "Some people will do anything for attention." The words hit him harder than he expected. He stepped back into the rain, the neon sign buzzing. Above him, he could have gone to any five-star hotel in the city. He could have made one call and had a suite ready, champagne on ice, staff at his feet. But that wasn't what he wanted. He wanted to be unseen. But the world wouldn't let him forget who he was. Keanu stood there, the rain soaking his hair, dripping into his eyes. In that moment, he felt the weight of being known but never really seen. And as he walked back to his truck, he didn't feel like a superstar. He felt like a man the world had decided could not be ordinary. But he didn't know that this night, this moment when the world turned its back, would lead him to a truth he hadn't expected, that sometimes being turned away opens a door you didn't know you needed to find. The road that found him. Keanu Reeves sat behind the wheel of his old truck, staring through the windshield as the rain came down in heavy sheets. The neon sign of the roadside inn blurred in the mirrors, its flicker like a dying heartbeat behind him. He could still hear the receptionist's cold laugh in his head. Some people will do anything for attention. He didn't blame her. Maybe, if he were her, he'd think the same. What kind of famous man would show up here, alone, with a single bag and eyes so tired they looked empty? He turned the key in the ignition, the truck grumbling awake. The rain splashed across the hood as he pulled out of the lot. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stay there. He didn't want a mansion or a suite tonight. He wanted a place where the walls didn't feel like glass and eyes didn't follow him. He just wanted a place where he could be a man and nothing more. The highway stretched out before him, dark and endless. Streetlights flickered past like ghosts, each one lighting up pieces of memories he had spent years trying to bury. He thought about all the hotels he had stayed in over the years, penthouse rooms in big cities, small boutique inns where everyone whispered his name when they thought he couldn't hear. It was always the same. People wanted a piece of him, a photo, a story to tell their friends. But tonight, he didn't want to be a story. He just wanted to rest. He drove for miles until the highway turned into narrow backroads lined with tall pines. His headlights cut through the mist as the rain eased into a soft drizzle. A small sign caught his eye: Sunset Cabins, vacancy. It looked old, the kind of place families stopped at during long road trips, a relic from decades past. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Keanu pulled in slowly, the gravel crunching under his tires. The cabins sat in a half-circle round a tiny office shack with a crooked porch light. He parked near the edge, letting the truck idle for a moment before killing the engine. He could feel his hands trembling as he reached for his bag. It wasn't fear, it was exhaustion. The kind that sinks deep into your bones when you feel the world has forgotten how to see you. He stepped out and walked to the office. The door creaked open to reveal an old man behind the counter, hunched over a crossword puzzle. His glasses sat low on his nose, and his plaid shirt looked older than the building. The man looked up when he heard the bell above the door. "Evenin'," the old man said, his voice rough but kind. "Rain catch you out there?" Keanu forced a small smile. "Yeah, just needed a place to sleep." The old man squinted at him. For a moment, Keanu braced himself for recognition. "Are you Keanu Reeves? Can I get a picture?" But the man just nodded, pushing a dusty ledger across the counter. "Name?" Keanu hesitated. "Johnny Silver." The old man chuckled. "That's a name for the movies, son." Keanu smiled weakly. "Yeah, something like that." The old man handed him a brass key attached to a piece of faded wood. "Cabin 6. Heater's a bit stubborn, so if it rattles, just give it a kick. Checkouts whenever you feel like leaving. We don't stand on ceremony here." Keanu felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you, no trouble. Good night, Johnny." Keanu stepped back into the misty night, the key warm in his palm. Cabin 6 was small, half hidden under an old oak tree. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old books. There was a bed with a patchwork quilt, a tiny desk with a lamp, and a shelf lined with mismatched paperbacks. It was simple, imperfect. It was exactly what he needed. He set his bag down and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, he just stared at the wooden walls, listening to the rain tapping gently on the window. Here, there were no security guards, no cold laughs, no cameras hidden behind curious eyes. Just the hum of the heater, and the soft creak of the floorboards. But even in this small haven, sleep did not come easily. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, memories chasing each other like shadows in the dark. He thought of the receptionist's face, her disbelief, her suspicion. He thought of how quickly people judge what they could not see. He thought of the countless nights he had spent surrounded by people but still felt alone. He didn't know yet that the receptionist's decision to call security would ripple through his life in ways he couldn't imagine. That someone in that lobby had filmed him on their phone, had whispered his name in secret, had sent it to someone who saw a man instead of a myth. And that tomorrow, the quiet of this tiny cabin would shatter with a knock on the door that would test the kindness he had always given to the world. As he closed his eyes, the rain outside sang him to sleep, its rhythm reminding him that sometimes the world has to shut you out before it shows you where you really belong. An unexpected knock the next morning. Keanu Reeves woke to the sound of birds singing in the trees outside cabin 6. For a moment, he lay there in the warm cocoon of the old patchwork quilt, staring at the wooden ceiling as the early light crept through the faded curtains. The rain had passed, leaving the world washed clean, but inside Keanu's chest, the heaviness of the night before still clung to him like a damp coat. He sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. The heater in the corner hummed a low, steady tune, its warmth filling the tiny room. On the small desk, his old book lay open to the same page he had tried to read the night before, but never finished. He smiled weakly at it, then stood up to stretch. His back ached from the long drive and the restless sleep, but for the first time in a while, he felt a fragile sense of peace. He brewed a cup of cheap coffee using the old kettle on the desk. The steam rose in lazy curls as he carried the mug out onto the tiny porch. The gravel lot was still wet, puddles reflecting the blue morning sky. The other cabins were quiet. It was as if the world had given him this moment to breathe. But the moment didn't last. As he sipped his coffee, a car pulled into the lot. It was an old sedan, the paint chipped and faded, the muffler rattling with each bump in the gravel. Keanu watched as the car rolled to a stop near the office. The driver's side door opened, and a woman stepped out, holding a small boy by the hand. Keanu's eyes narrowed. The woman looked young but tired. Her clothes were clean but worn at the edges, and the boy clung to her side like he was afraid the wind might blow him away. Keanu felt a twist in his chest. He didn't know them, but something about the way they stood together in the morning light made him feel like he did. He turned to go back inside, not wanting to intrude on a stranger's trouble, when he heard footsteps crunching on the gravel path. He looked over his shoulder and saw the woman walking straight toward him, her eyes wide, her steps uncertain but determined. The boy shuffled along beside her, his small shoes kicking up tiny stones. "Excuse me," the woman called out, her voice cracking just a little. Keanu set his mug down on the porch railing. "Good morning." She stopped a few feet away, her eyes scanning his face like she was searching for something she had seen once, but wasn't sure was real. Are you Keanu Reeves?" she asked, her voice so quiet he almost didn't hear it. Keanu's shoulders tensed. Part of him wanted to lie, to hide behind the name Johnny Silver again, but he was too tired to pretend. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I am." The woman let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. The boy peeked out from behind her, his big eyes staring up at Keanu with a mix of fear and hope that made his heart ache. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I know this is strange. I saw the video. The receptionist, someone posted it. They said you were here. I didn't believe it at first, but I didn't know where else to go." Keanu stepped down from the porch, his boots sinking slightly into the damp gravel. "It's okay. Take your time." The woman wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve. "My name is Lucy. This is my son, Sammy. We've been living in our car for 3 weeks now. I lost my job at the diner. My landlord kicked us out. I tried the shelters, but they're full. I know you don't know me, but I thought maybe you'd understand." Keanu felt the world tilt under his feet. He looked at the boy, who wouldn't meet his eyes but clutched a small, battered teddy bear to his chest, the same ache that had settled in his bones last night. came roaring back, but this time it felt like fire instead of cold. "Why me?" Keanu asked softly. Lucy looked at him, her eyes wide and raw. "Because you're kind. Because they said you tried to stay here like a normal person. You didn't shout or threaten when they called security on you. You just left. You didn't act better than them. I thought maybe you'd understand what it's like to feel invisible." Keanu's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her he wasn't a savior. He was just a tired man in an old cabin trying to disappear for one night. But looking at Lucy and Sammy, he knew the truth. Sometimes the world doesn't let you disappear. Sometimes when someone else's eyes find you in the darkness, you have to stand in the light again. He motioned for them to sit on the porch steps. They lowered themselves down carefully, Sammy pressing close to his mother's side. Keanu sat across from them, elbows on his knees, trying to find the right words. "What do you need right now?" he asked gently. Lucy hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "Just one night inside, somewhere safe. I can figure out the rest tomorrow. I promise. I need Sammy to feel warm again." Keanu felt something sharp twist inside him. He thought of the cold nights he had spent alone when he was young, curled up in the back of a bus station, his mind spinning with what-ifs. He knew that kind of hunger, that kind of cold, and he knew what it felt like to have nobody open the door. "You can stay here," he said, his voice steady. "I'll take cabin 7. It's empty. You and Sammy stay here tonight." Lucy's eyes widened. "No, I can't ask you to." "You didn't," Keanu said. "I'm offering." Sammy peeked up at him then, his small voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Keanu forced a smile, though his eyes burned. "You're welcome, buddy." As he stood up and grabbed his bag, he heard Lucy whisper something to her son. He didn't catch all of it, but he heard the part that mattered. Kindness still lives in this world. "Sammy, remember that." Keanu stepped off the porch and walked toward cabin 7, his breath fogging in the morning air. He didn't know how the world would twist this. Maybe tomorrow someone would find out and turn it into another story, another headline. But right now, it didn't matter. Right now, he wasn't a superstar. He wasn't Johnny Silver. He was just a man who had a room and who opened the door. And sometimes that was enough. The weight of one promise. KeanuReeves spent the day in cabin 7, sitting on the edge of the creaky bed, staring out the window at the trees that swayed gently in the wind. His mind wasn't on the peaceful forest or the soft light that made the raindrops shine like tiny stars on the glass. His mind was with Lucy and Sammy, just one cabin over, wondering if they were warm enough, if they felt safe enough, if the fear in their eyes would soften when morning came. He didn't know why he cared so much. He didn't know why this stranger's struggle felt like an echo of his own past. Maybe it was because he still remembered nights alone, the cold concrete of bus stations, the way people looked right through him because they didn't see a boy they saw, a problem to avoid. Maybe it was because fame hadn't erased the part of him that still wanted to believe that people could be more than what the world made them. In the afternoon, he knocked gently on the door of cabin 6. Lucy opened it, her hair pulled back, her eyes tired but brighter than they had been that morning. Inside, Sammy was curled up under the patchwork quilt, a small smile tugging at his lips as he hugged his teddy bear. "We were just about to go for a walk," Lucy said quickly, as if she was afraid he'd tell them to leave. "You don't have to worry about us staying too long." Keanu shook his head. "It's okay. I wanted to see if you needed anything, food, blankets, anything." Lucy bit her lip, her eyes welling up. "You've done enough, more than enough." Keanu glanced at Sammy, who was now half asleep, warm and safe for the first time in days. "It's not enough," Keanu said softly. "I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." Lucy's shoulders sagged under the weight she'd been holding for too long. She stepped outside onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her, so Sammy wouldn't hear. "I keep telling myself it's just a bad month," she whispered. "Just a few more days until I get another job, until I save enough for a deposit. But every day it gets harder, and I hate that he sees me like this. I hate that he thinks the world is nothing but closed doors." Keanu leaned against the porch railing, the rough wood biting into his palms. "You're doing your best. You kept him safe." That counts. Lucy shook her head. Does it? I'm a mother who can't even promise her son a bed. Keanu's chest ached at her words. You're a mother who's fighting. That's what he'll remember. Trust me. She looked at him then, really looked at him, like she was trying to see the man behind the name. Why are you doing this? Why are you here, in a place like this, helping strangers like us? Keanu let out a slow breath, the truth heavier than he wanted to admit. Because sometimes, the world tries to make you believe you're alone, and then someone proves you wrong. Years ago, someone helped me when I was just a kid. I never forgot that. Maybe this is my way of paying it forward. Lucy's eyes shimmered with tears she couldn't hide anymore. She wiped them away with the back of her hand. You don't know what this means to us. Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You don't owe me anything. Just take care of Sammy. That's enough. That night, Keanu lay awake in cabin 7, staring at the ceiling while the wind whistled through the trees outside. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He picked it up to see an article someone had sent him. Keanu Reeves kicked out of Motel after using fake name. The video from the receptionist's lobby was already spreading. People online were laughing, calling it strange, saying he must be losing his mind. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know about the boy sleeping peacefully just a few yards away because he had opened his door. He turned off the phone and lay there in the dark, his thoughts spinning like leaves caught in a storm. He wondered how long Lucy and Sammy could stay like this. One night was never enough. One night was just a pause in the fight, a fragile promise against the cold. He knew that when the sun came up, they'd still have nowhere to go. In the early morning hours, Keanu made a decision. He would not let them walk away into the same darkness he'd known. He would not stand at the door and watch it close on them like it had closed on him so many times before. He would find a way to help them stand on their own, not just for one night, but for good. He closed his eyes, a small smile breaking through the worry. Maybe the world could see him as a fool for caring too much. Maybe they'd call him strange for showing up at cheap motels under fake names. But he didn't care. Sometimes, the greatest thing you can do is be the open door you once wished for yourself. The storm that tested them when the sun rose. It brought a pale, cold light that made the damp earth sparkle outside the little cabins. Keanu Reeves sat at the small wooden table in cabin 7, a steaming cup of coffee cooling in his hands. He had barely slept. His thoughts had turned like restless waves all night long, crashing against the same question: how do you help someone who has no door left to knock on? He knew Lucy and Sammy would wake soon, and he knew they'd be expecting to leave. He could already hear the faint creak of the floorboards in cabin 6, the quiet murmur of a mother trying to tell her child that they couldn't stay forever. Keanu stood up and opened the door just as Lucy stepped out onto the porch, her coat wrapped tight around her thin frame, her eyes squinting at the morning light. Good morning, Keanu called gently. Lucy forced a smile, but he could see the worry beneath it. We'll be out of your hair soon, I promise. Keanu shook his head. No rush. Come on, let's get some breakfast. They sat at the tiny diner down the road, a place that smelled of burnt coffee and fried eggs, the kind of place that didn't care who you were as long as you could pay for your plate. Sammy pressed his face against the window, watching the cars splash through puddles on the street. Lucy picked at her toast, her eyes darting to Keanu every few minutes, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Finally, she spoke. I know you mean well, but we can't keep taking from you. You've done enough. Keanu stirred his coffee, his spoon clinking softly against the chipped mug. You're not taking anything. You're letting me do what someone once did for me. Lucy's eyes softened. What are you going to do? You can't save everyone, Keanu. He looked at her, his eyes steady but gentle. Maybe not everyone, but maybe just one boy, just one mother who's doing her best. Lucy looked down, her hands trembling as she held her coffee cup. I don't want to be another problem for you. People will talk. They'll say you're crazy. Keanu almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. They already do. Let them talk. Before they could say more, a man approached their table, a man in a cheap suit with a camera half hidden in his coat pocket. His eyes flicked from Keanu to Lucy to Sammy, calculating, hungry for something he could sell. "Keanu Reeves, right?" the man said, his voice slick as oil. "What's this? Some secret charity project. Mind if I get a picture?" Lucy's face drained of color. She pulled Sammy close to her side. Keanu's jaw tightened. He looked at the man, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "Please leave us alone." The man smirked. "Come on, people would love this." The world's biggest nice guy hiding out in roadside motels with... Before he could finish, the diner owner, a big man with grease stains on his apron, stepped in. "You heard him. Get out before I throw you out," the man grumbled, backing away with a final sneer. But the damage was done. Lucy's eyes shimmered with tears. She tried to blink away. "See, this is what happens. You don't deserve this. We should go." Keanu reached across the table, his hand warm over hers. "Lucy, you and Sammy are not a problem. You're not. Charity, you're people. And sometimes people need each other. That's it." She looked at him, her lip trembling. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that kindness could be real and not just another headline. The rain started again as they drove back to the cabins. The sky darkened, and the wind picked up, making the branches of the old pines rattle like bones. When they stepped out of the truck, the rain turned to a downpour. They ran for the porches, laughing breathlessly as the storm soaked through their clothes. Inside cabin 6, Lucy helped Sammy change into dry pajamas. He giggled when Keanu handed him an old pair of wool socks that sagged around his ankles. For a while, it felt like a real home. 3 people who didn't belong together, yet somehow fit. But the peace didn't last. Late that night, as thunder rolled overhead, there was another knock at the door. Lucy froze, her hand tightening around Sammy's shoulder. Keanu opened the door to find the manager of the cabins, standing there, his face red, his hands shaking with anger. "Mr. Reeves," the manager said, his voice harsh, "I've been getting calls. People asking if you're really here, what you're doing with strangers in the cabins. This is a quiet place. We don't want trouble. You can't stay." Keanu stood tall, the storm wind blowing rain into the small room. "We're not causing trouble. We'll pay double, triple." The manager shook his head. "It's not about money. It's about reputation. People talk. You can't stay." Behind Keanu, Lucy pulled Sammy close, her eyes wide with fear. She had heard this before closed doors, cold words, a promise of warmth ripped away by whispers and suspicion. Keanu stepped onto the porch, the rain soaking his hair, his voice calm but steel underneath. "You want me gone, fine. But they stay." The manager crossed his arms. "That's not my problem. They're with you." Keanu felt something burn in his chest, an old anger that he had spent years burying. He looked back at Lucy, who was already gathering their few things, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is what always happens." Keanu reached for her hand, his grip firm. "Not this time." They packed up what little they had, the storm beating down around them. As they climbed back into the truck, thunder cracked overhead like the world was tearing apart. But inside the cab, it was quiet, just 3 people pressed close together, trying to believe that kindness could still win, even when the world slammed doors shut. Keanu started the engine, his knuckles white on the wheel. He didn't know where they would go next. He didn't know what waited for them down the road. But he knew one thing: he would not break the promise he had made. Because some storms don't wash you away, they wash you clean. The door that stayed open. KeanuReeves drove through the storm, the wipers beating back the rain as it poured across the windshield like endless tears. Lucy and Sammy sat beside him, pressed together under an old blanket he kept behind the seats. Every now and then, he would glance at them in the mirror, Lucy's eyes red from crying, but trying to stay brave for her son, and Sammy curled against her side, his tiny face hidden in the folds of the blanket. The world felt so big and cold, but inside that truck, they were a small circle of warmth against it. They didn't speak for a long time. The road stretched out, dark and empty, the trees bending under the wind. Keanu's mind turned over every worry. Where would they go now? Who would help them if every door kept closing? He had money, he had power, but he knew how hard it was to convince the world to care about the people it liked to forget. Finally, Lucy's soft voice broke the silence. "You don't have to keep doing this. You could leave us somewhere safe and go back to your life. Keanu gripped the wheel tighter. This is my life. Lucy shook her head, a weak laugh escaping her lips. You're Keanu Reeves. You don't need to pick up strays. Keanu's eyes softened as he looked at her through the rearview mirror. I'm not picking up strays. I'm keeping a promise. I told you last night sometimes people need each other. You and Sammy need help, but maybe I need you too. She didn't answer, but he saw her shoulders drop, just a little, like maybe she believed him for the first time, after what felt like forever. They pulled into the lot of a small diner still open. Despite the storm, it glowed warm and yellow through the rain like a lighthouse. Inside, they sat at a corner booth, steaming mugs of cocoa between their hands. The old waitress didn't ask questions when she saw who he was. She just brought extra marshmallows for Sammy and refilled their mugs until the worry in their faces eased. Keanu made some calls while they sipped their drinks. Old friends, people who owed him favors, people who worked behind the scenes and didn't care about headlines. At first, there were a lot of polite no's and hesitant excuses. But then one old friend, a woman named Ruth, who ran a small community housing network, said yes. Ruth didn't care about his name or the mess the press would make if they found out. She only cared that Lucy and Sammy needed a safe place to land and a fresh start. She found them a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, just a short drive from where they sat. She even promised to help Lucy find work and get Sammy back in school. When Keanu hung up, he looked at Lucy. Her eyes were wide, shining with a hope she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. You did that, she whispered. Keanu shrugged, a shy smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I had some help, but it's yours. You don't owe me anything. Lucy grabbed his hand across the sticky diner table. You opened a door for us when everyone else slammed it shut. Keanu squeezed her hand back. You knocked on it. Sometimes that's the hardest part. Later that night, he drove them to their new apartment. It was small but warm, with soft yellow walls and clean sheets on the beds. Sammy ran from room to room, his laughter echoing down the narrow hallway. Lucy stood in the middle of the living room, her hands covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Keanu stood beside her, not saying a word. He knew sometimes silence was the kindest thing in the world. When they finally said goodbye, Lucy hugged him tight, holding on like she was afraid the dream would disappear. Sammy wrapped his tiny arms around Keanu's leg, his voice muffled but clear. Thank you. Keanu knelt down so he could look Sammy in the eyes. You're going to be okay now, buddy. You and your mom. Sammy nodded, his eyes shining with trust. Will you visit us? Keanu smiled, ruffling his hair. As long as you let me. He walked back to his truck alone. The rain had stopped, the storm passing like it always does. The road ahead was empty. Waiting for him, he could have gone back to the bright lights, the movie sets, the rooms where everyone knew his name but nobody really knew him. But as he looked back at the apartment window where Lucy and Sammy stood waving at him, he knew he wouldn't forget this. He knew that sometimes being seen as just a man, just someone who cared, was worth more than all the lights in the world. In the end, it didn't matter that the receptionist had laughed, that security had pushed him out, that people online called him strange for wanting to disappear for a night. What mattered was this: when someone knocked, he had opened the door, and when the world said no, he had said yes. And sometimes that's how you save someone. And sometimes that's how you save yourself.